is like, it's an hour long. I shortened it to 40 minutes for sits, and now I'm going to try to shorten it to 20 minutes for OSD. Good
We need to
luck.
chat longer because I can sense it's annoying Matt, but
Yeah.
he really wants to get going.
He does,
Please
he
do
does.
not do
But I was just
that.
making sure that we had everyone. So we got 19 people in the room, including the Baron. Take it away.
Welcome. And if you've got questions or you want to annoy me, like Simon Gale pointed out, do it in chat so it's not too disruptive so we can get through the content because there's a lot here. Thank you for coming to my presentation to discuss something that I'm clearly passionate about. When you pitch presentations to events, they make you give a title and a paragraph describing the presentation. And I put this as the title, Is Asset Management the Most Important Process? But I should have made it this. Asset management is the most important process. There is a QR code here. So if you want to download my content from this year and last year, all my presentations I try to share on there. And my presentations have my speaker notes so you can kind of hear what I'm presenting. Or you can go to mattberan.com and download that all as well. Blah, 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 blah. Here's the table of contents that we're not going to spend any time on. There's my kids. We went hiking in Banff last year and they're smiling, so you know we love to hike. And an obligatory shot of my dogs, Dante on the left, Eddie on the right. And they are so cute. They have to be separated to have a picture like that. Hi, I'm Matt Beran. I build service management stuff. I consider myself an IT analyst now. That's kind of my role. And I'll fully admit that when I built this presentation, I did not actually believe that asset management was the most important process. I thought that asset management was a really boring, lame process that didn't really actually provide that much value. And I came to realize I was wrong. Asset management is actually the most important process. So when does asset management become important? And the hint is that it's almost immediately. I think we can all agree that when a single founder starts a company and they've got one computer, they don't really need asset management. Maybe they add a CTO or a CFO. They don't really need asset management when they're doing it this way either because they can kind of touch both laptops. But once we double in size and we've got 4 people, 4 laptops, 4 phones, maybe we add a server, we add some infrastructure. Raise your hand if you think that we need asset management at this point. Do we need it? Maybe so, maybe not. How about when we're 50 people and we've got 15 servers? Do we need it now? Is this the point where we need asset management? I've worked for this company. I've worked for companies this size several times. And although things work out when you don't have asset management, a cyber incident would have destroyed profitability. Small businesses, this is one of the biggest risks that a small business has. Thanks for coming, Simon. What if you give everyone a phone as well and add some cloud servers in here? So now we're up to probably around $500,000 in assets. So surely we need asset management now, right? So this is why asset management is the most important process. What happens when a few phones are stolen? What happens when a few computers go missing? And what if we aren't using a cloud resource anymore, but we're paying for it for 5 years? Who noticed how many missing phones there were? Put it in chat. How many phones were missing? Put it in chat. How many laptops were missing? Who can guess? And the reason that I bring this up is we don't know anything. This is what a cybersecurity incident actually feels like. Did those machines have BitLocker turned on? Did those phones have customer data on them? Do we have to disclose that we lost customer data at this point? We may not know. Without asset management, this is what we know, this black screen with nothing on it. You might be able to find the specs of those computers, when you bought them, maybe the invoice, but that's all you're really going to find. So what would we have known if asset management was in place? What if we had asset management? We would know that there were 5 phones stolen and we had 4 laptops missing. We would know that around $20,000 is what we paid for the machines that are missing. We would know their models. We would know when they were bought. We would know, what we're going to have to replace them with. Do we know if they have sensitive information? Maybe we're tracking that as part of asset management. Maybe we're tracking that as part of data management. But there was personally identifiable customer information on 2 of the laptops, let's say, in this fake reality where these things have been stolen. So, and one of those machines wasn't encrypted because it was running Intune, an Intune agent from 2013. So there's no remote wipe option. You couldn't actually wipe that computer. And we didn't find that this computer was missing until 5 years later. So we had no idea even that it was missing. If we don't have asset management, we don't know these answers. We don't know if they have insurance. We don't know if we actually lost the thing. Maybe it's actually in the office somewhere. Maybe we have it in IT for repair and we don't even know. This is what the cyber incident feels like when you have asset management too. We know a lot more. We know the scope of the loss. And if our processes are solid, we can prove some things. But in reality, it doesn't matter if we have asset management or not if we're not tracking the right information. So when you do lose an asset, you have about 72 hours to report. This is particularly if you're doing business in the EU at all. You are beholden to GDPR for working with European citizens. And so you have 72 hours to report that you lost customer information. And if you don't report in those 72 hours, you start to incur fines. And the GDPR fines, I think, are 20% of your net revenue, not gross revenue, net revenue, or up to $20 million, depending on losses. So that's an expensive disclosure, no matter what you're making. So realistically, an organization without asset management will be disclosing more because they know less, right? If you don't know if you have customer information on a computer, you may need to disclose that you lost a computer. You don't know if it has customer data on it. And if you don't disclose that in time, gets expensive. So what is asset management exactly? It's an attempt to ensure financially significant assets are managed throughout their life cycle and that they're disposed of when they expire. This is the boring part of asset management. But it's also to ensure financially significant assets are managed throughout their life cycle and that they're disposed of when they expire. And I read that already, so I'm going to read this is actually a quote from Keith Sutherland at Butch Sheets. It's from this book called A Practical Guide to Service Management. But we can't manage assets that we don't know exist. And it might as well not exist given how many people and assets we're trying to track. If you've got 20,000 employees, 10,000 employees, and 50,000 assets, and you're not doing asset management, I'm sorry, but it sounds so chaotic and disjointed. I can't say that you're doing asset management. Now you can download these slides. And I've got a ton more content in here. Don't read the slides, but these are some of the things that you'll have to do reporting for, and these are the reporting periods. So HIPAA, you've got 60 days. The California thing, they're like without unreasonable delay because they don't want to be too specific. But these are some of the reasons that you'll have to report if you lose computers or lose data. So it becomes asset management becomes super important when you start needing to manage that kind of data. So why track this stuff? We now know that asset management is critical for literally every organization over 4 employees, or at least once you hit 50 employees. These are the basics of asset management. Track what you've purchased, understand where it is, what it's used for, plan for replacement and inform purchases, and dispose of properly. And the idea is that you have complete chain of custody. Hopefully you've heard of chain of custody. If you haven't, the idea is that all organizations should be able to tell who is in possession of an asset through the entire life cycle of that asset, and your asset management platform, whatever you're using, should support that. Here's another look at that. NIST has another asset management life cycle, also very useful. There's a ton of guidance around this, but the idea is explore what the frameworks have to say. Since, of course, this is foundational to cybersecurity, NIST is very interested in what you're doing in asset management space, because IT asset management is the inventory engine that tells you at any moment what tech you own, who's using it, what it costs, and when it needs attention. And when I look at that life cycle, I see a circular economy. I see a system. I see something that we can leverage for data and to grow. With a well-tuned engine, you get value not just from the technology, but from the data from that system. So understanding where your things are can save you money or make you money. So how do we benefit from that? These are the four major values of ITAM: compliance, governance, risk, and finance, financial information. Here's some of the compliance standards. Hopefully none of these are really that strange to you. If you feel uncomfortable exploring compliance standards, I encourage you to just start reading about them and learning through AI, learning through LLMs about them. Fascinating concept and very useful for our jobs, of course. There's some that are missing here too. I'm not talking about COBIT or FedRAMP or Energy Star. There's tons more than what's just listed there. But the idea is that once we comply to what we need to comply to, we can then govern. So we can, once we comply, because that's the basic of asset management, then we can use that asset management to govern our company, inform our decisions, do ESG things, do things that are good for the environment, inform our purchases, govern ourselves. We can also, once we're governing, then we can reduce risk. So is this ours? How are we responding to losing these things? And once we are reducing risk, then we can also have the icing on the cake. We had the entree, we've had the appetizer, we had dessert. Now we're just having the frosting on the cake, and that is financial management. Understanding where we're spending our money, understanding where we're losing money, so that we can make that up, so we can depreciate our assets, write that off on our taxes, be prepared for audits instead of just being surprised when Adobe sends us a message, and of course do great procurement and life cycle planning. If you want to nerd, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is, if you want to nerd out about asset management, come on, let's go. But the idea is that this gives us comfort. This helps us make better data-driven decisions. That's what asset management is about, is providing information through these value points. So this is all the proof that you should need. Number one, this research is a little old. It's from 2009, but there's not a ton more new research on this, unfortunately. Come on, Forrester, get your act together. I've got a few Gartner quotes in here too, but they could maybe do this research too. I don't have the money to do this research, but the average cost of a laptop lost with personally identifiable information, specifically customer data, is around $72,000, and that's the average. Think about what that means for 50 assets. 50 times 70,000 US. I mean, I'm not great at math, but that's around $3.5 million, which is an insane amount of money. We think about these laptops like they're $1,000. Oh, I lost a laptop. I lost $1,000. No, if it has customer data on it, you might have just lost $70,000. And so that's an important aspect of asset management. Sure, we're tracking the cost and the price of these things, but what is the risk? Gartner predicts that the initial purchase represents only 20% of the total cost of an IT asset. When I saw this stat, I freaked out. It makes me want to buy 2 laptops for every employee. It makes me want to buy 2 iPhones for every employee so that they've got one sitting there. Because if this is if this is only 20% of the cost, the other 80% we know is maintenance, we know it's warranty, we know it's incidents. So it's an interesting stat, one that's useful. There's tons of horror stories. Morgan Stanley in 2020, they had to pay a fine of over $60 million for failing to properly decommission 2 wealth management data centers in 2016. So 4 years after they decommissioned the data centers, they realized that they had done a poor job of it, and they started to receive fines. They didn't supervise the third-party vendors that were responsible for wiping data from those servers and other hardware. And as a result, believe it or not, those recyclers were not wiping the hardware. Customer information was left on the equipment and sold to recyclers. And man, did that cost money. Whew. You think about the cost of moving a data center or closing a data center, their costs just went up big time. MoveIt is a piece of software that many companies used to use to transfer data securely. I don't know if their trust is still in the company, but they were beholden to a zero-day exploit. They actually had an SQL injection attack, and over 2,700 organizations use this, including some of the major healthcare systems in the United States. It's estimated that 95 million people have been impacted by this hack, and they're estimating that the losses are at almost $16 billion. It's still going up because they're still finding cases. It's still under investigation, and they haven't actually been fined yet because it's still in process. Nutty. If you're in the industry for more than the last 10 years, you know that SolarWinds got hacked. An alleged Russian hacking group gained access to SolarWinds' system in the Sunburst attack. And this one's interesting because it's in our space. SolarWinds does asset management. They do CMDB stuff, but they were attacked because they're a supply chain. Get into the CMDB of SolarWinds, get into the CMDB of all their customers. It was estimated that 18,000 companies were beholden to this attack. And props to SolarWinds. I gotta get, even though they're a competitor, I gotta give them props because they disclosed properly. They disclosed early. They disclosed quickly. They disclosed broadly as well, and so they ended up paying almost nothing in fines. Unfortunately, their reputation did get damaged, got tarnished. It's estimated that they lost about 18 million in revenue just from their stock. Some of their major customers that got fines were Unisys for $4 million, Avaya Holdings, Checkpoint Software Technologies, Mimecast. All those companies got fined $1 million each and those are the companies that didn't disclose. So that's kind of an interesting one because it's a supply chain attack. And didn't we hear about Morgan Stanley already? Well, it turns out that they lost some of the servers during that decommissioning of those data centers as well. And those servers ended up on eBay. So they paid another $35 million fine for not protecting their customer information. And it was estimated about 15 million of their customers were exposed. It's insane. The SEC highlighted failures to activate encryption and properly safeguard and dispose of consumer information, but it was nuts. If you're in the UK, you've heard of this one too, M&S, Marks and Spencer, which I had never heard of until I got to SITS and someone pointed out that they were undergoing a major incident, and I hope that turned out. But my point is, I'm a positive guy. So maybe it's not all doom and gloom. Maybe these companies paid millions because of mismanaged assets, but we're not going to do that, right? It's all part of the past. Those are examples and horror stories from the past. So what does the future hold? Gartner says that hard numbers on asset usage and duplication are the #1 cost optimization discipline for 24-25. I have to agree that we're seeing tons and tons more companies investing in asset management because they're starting to realize that the risks are really big. And these are some of the reasons too, that you can actually just pay for asset management by doing it. You're going to recover 15 to 30% of your SaaS spending. You're going to recover some of your hardware refresh costs, and you'll be able to negotiate better because you'll understand what you need and who's using it. Those are the big things, I think, anyway. That's where the real value of that data is in that savings, in that audit defense, building up that audit defense. So we all need asset management because if we're going to leverage AI, it's going to have to know stuff about our infrastructure. It needs to know about our processes and the things we own, who they're for, and where they are. MTTR drops when you do asset management because this is how digital employee experience is done, is through asset management, looking at the technology that they're using, understanding its status, and then reacting. It's how you become proactive. So great. Asset management is great. There's good stuff coming. There's obviously good reasons to do it in our past. So maybe we don't need asset management. What about the other processes? Maybe they're really good. I don't think so. I think they're rubbish. Incident, that's just a sign that we screwed up a service. Change, we should have automated that 10 years ago. Ask your DevOps teams. Problem, that's just a sign that we really screwed up. Really, really bad. Knowledge, that's going to be done by AIs. Configuration, it's just for computer nerds. And request management, that should have been automated years ago. But in all seriousness, is asset management the most important? When I asked online, I got this awesome response from Peter, and he has a point. No process is more important than another. The most important process is when the connection between the processes is the most important part, and also the people using them. Peter, you're such an altruist, Peter. But I think that the value of incident goes down without asset. Incident management requires asset management to become very valuable. This is how we understand, pattern recognition. Change without asset management is surgery without the patient's chart, without understanding what are we doing this on? What is the history of this thing that we're performing actions on? And requests, they require that we have assets in stock to hit delivery targets. And where do we understand what's in stock? Asset management. All these processes are garbage when they don't have asset management. So we don't really have a reason to not do asset management. We've got to do asset management, okay? Okay, fine. Peter's right. All processes are equally important. It's great to have incident management and problem management. Fine. Asset management just amplifies the other processes. And every process is a special snowflake now. Great. Thank you. I did decide that I should do this presentation in satire because a rising tide does raise all boats. It's not just true in IT, but this is true in our businesses as well. If you work in a complex system or an interdependent system, you know that this is super important, that all processes are important in politics, relationships, technology, anything that's complex. In a way, it's the right way to mature your organization and IT and HR and finance and everything gradually. Just like an orchestra, one musician can't be better than the rest or they're wasted. A company that only invests in sales will have no sales because they didn't invest in marketing. A company that only invests in IT. A company that only invests in IT? Well, that actually sounds like a great idea. We can buy any technology that we want. That sounds awesome. Let's do that. You know what? Never mind. Asset management, it is the most important process. You're right. Totally, it is. And you know why? Because AI is going to do everything else. We'll just be the puppets for AI. We're going to be the meat space UI for AI. We don't have to worry about everything else. Okay, I hope you realize that I'm joking. I'm not trying to create AI fear, but rather that this was a satirical presentation. And my point is, don't sleep on asset management. It may not be the engine of ITSM, right? It's not the be all end all of everything, but it is a turbocharger. It makes all of your other processes more effective and more efficient. Think back to this definition that I said at the beginning. Ensure financially significant assets are tracked through their life cycle. Every asset is financially significant if it loses customer data. Imagine the memory chips on your printer storing customer data in a print-off format, that PDF that Susie sent to the printer. It's on that memory. It's on the memory on the printer. And if you go and recycle that printer without thinking about that data, that is a risk. Incredible to think of all those risks. And said another way, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Owning a laptop has value, but keeping it safe and protecting that value is worth so much more. $72,000 more. It's just a massive amount more. So every time you lose an asset, you have also lost control. You've lost control of your information. You've lost control of your security. It's the basis of cybersecurity. So maintain your assets to maintain your services. And that's our goal, because good service is good business. Here's some more reading on this subject if you want to get nerdy about this. Number 3 is a huge one. I highly recommend you join the open service community. It's a grassroots Discord and Reddit specifically for service management geeks. I also run a podcast called Ticket Volume. Highly recommend you check it out. We just reached 100 episodes. There's a QR code here, and you can go to mattberan.com to download these slides and every slide from all my presentations over the last couple of years. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be giving away a few asset management tools in the next few weeks, so please follow me. And do we have any questions? Let's open it up for discussion and questions. I wasn't able to pay attention to chat, so hopefully there was some good discussion in there.
First of all, just want to say, really cool, Matt.
I fit it into 20.
That's probably the fastest I've ever heard you talk through.